My parents tricked me into paying for my sister's wedding, so I vanished from their lives and bought the house they tried to deny me. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. From as far back as I can remember, I was the kid who balanced school, part-time jobs, and family responsibilities while my parents focused on Lily, my younger sister, as if she were the sun and the rest of us just planets orbiting her glow. Bills, school fees, late-night homework, and even the occasional car repair, those were all on me. I didn't mind, I thought this was what family meant. I thought being dependable was my role, my duty, my quiet way of proving love. Meanwhile, my parents constantly praised Lily as if everything she did was flawless, effortlessly perfect, and every little thing I accomplished seemed to go unnoticed. When Lily got engaged, I felt genuine excitement. I wanted to be the brother who helped her have the wedding she dreamed of, the one she deserved, or so I told myself. I pictured myself negotiating with caterers, helping design the invitations, maybe even sneaking a few extra touches to make the day magical. I imagined her happiness radiating across the room while I stood back, proud but invisible, silently satisfied that I'd done my part. But almost immediately, small cracks started appearing. My parents, smiling as they did, would casually drop hints about pitching in more, for this or that, and Lily would say things like, "You know, it's all supposed to be perfect, right?" I laughed it off, thinking it was normal wedding stress, but deep down, something niggled at me, a small, uncomfortable knot in my stomach. The unease lingered every time I noticed how they spoke to Lily versus how they spoke to me. Their excitement for her seemed endless, almost performative, while my contributions were assumed, never praised. I chalked it up to wedding chaos, convincing myself I was overthinking it. But as I watched them fuss over floral arrangements, guest lists, and seating charts, the feeling in the pit of my stomach grew heavier, like I was already being written out of the story, even before it had begun. It all started the night Lily's fiancé, Mark, came over to our house. My parents' eyes lit up in a way that made my chest tighten. They weren't excited for Lily and Mark, at least not entirely, they were excited about what I would be providing. As Mark sat down, polite and awkward, my dad leaned back and casually said, "You know, you have to make this perfect for Lily. She deserves nothing less." My mom nodded eagerly, adding, "It's just what a loving brother would do, right?" I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. I told myself it was just excitement talking, that I was stepping up because family comes first. Over the next few weeks, the hints became more pointed. I found myself calculating numbers in my head, deposits, catering, decorations, travel arrangements. Each expense seemed small in isolation, but together they formed a mountain of costs I hadn't anticipated. I dipped into my savings, justifying it as a gift for my sister, for her happiness, for the smiles that would light up the wedding day. I even took a small loan, convincing myself it was temporary and honorable, an investment in family memories. Every time I handed over money, my parents would beam with satisfaction, patting me on the back and calling me so responsible. Then came the subtle flexing of my generosity. At neighborhood gatherings, my parents would casually mention how wonderful I'd been in covering this or that, always speaking to neighbors as if I were the family bank rather than their son. I felt a confusing mix of pride and unease, the pride of doing the right thing colliding with a nagging doubt in my gut. Something about the way they smiled, the way Lily shrugged with a rehearsed grin, it felt orchestrated. I tried to brush it off, telling myself, family first. Always. But deep down, the knot in my stomach tightened, whispering that this wasn't admiration, they were taking advantage. And yet, I kept going, not realizing how much this would cost me, in more ways than money. The day of Lily's wedding arrived, and the house was buzzing with energy, flowers cascading from every corner, tables stacked with lavish centerpieces, the scent of fresh roses and expensive candles filling the air. I walked through the venue, trying to ignore the tightening in my chest as I realized that every extravagant detail, every perfectly arranged chair and sparkling decoration, had come from my hard-earned money. My parents floated around Lily, glowing with pride, showering her and Mark with compliments while barely glancing at me. "It's amazing, isn't it? Everything turned out perfectly, my mom said to me once, her smile polite but empty, as if I were a bystander rather than the one who made it possible. Then a relative, sipping champagne, leaned over and whispered, "Of course, it was expected he'd handle this. That's just how things are in your family." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, their words sank like cold lead. All my sacrifices, every late night at work, every skipped weekend, every cent I'd handed over, they were normalized, assumed, and unappreciated. A sting of betrayal slithered into my gut, bitter and unmistakable. I forced a smile, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, trying to keep the peace while my throat burned with unspoken frustration. I caught glimpses of my dwindling bank account numbers flashing behind my eyelids, a silent reminder of how much I had given away. Each congratulatory hug for Lily felt like a quiet erasure of me, as though my contributions didn't even exist. And yet, I kept smiling, telling myself this was about her happiness, about family, even as the unease grew. The whispers, the casual hints, the invisible weight of my financial strain, they were there, bubbling beneath the surface. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a darker thought began to form, maybe the real betrayal hadn't happened yet. A week after the wedding, I finally sat down to review my finances, trying to reconcile what little I had left. That's when I saw it, large withdrawals and transfers from my savings, the ones I'd been meticulously stashing for years, had vanished. Confused and panicked, I traced them back and realized the money had gone straight into wedding-related accounts my parents had controlled. It wasn't just the gifts, the decorations, or the loans I had taken, it was my own nest egg, siphoned away without my knowledge. My heart sank, and for a moment I felt dizzy, like the floor beneath me had disappeared. I confronted them one evening, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom, Dad, what happened to my savings?" "It was meant for me," I said, holding back the tremor in my hands. My dad chuckled lightly, waving a hand. "It's family, you know. These things happen. You wanted to help Lily, and you did." My mom added softly, "We're all working together. You don't understand duty yet." Their words stung in a new, sharper way, dismissive, almost cruel, a subtle kind of gaslighting I hadn't expected from the people who raised me. It hit me then, like a sudden punch to the chest, everything I gave, everything I sacrificed, had been taken for granted. My efforts weren't appreciated, they were expected. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't new. For years, I had been manipulated, emotionally and financially, the silent scapegoat to my sister's golden child status. Sitting in my empty bedroom that night, I stared at the ceiling, anger and disbelief simmering together. A thought began to take root, heavy and electric. Maybe it was time to stop being their bank, their helper, their invisible son. Maybe it was time to reclaim my life. But the question lingered, heavy as lead: could I really walk away from the family I'd always thought I could trust? I stared at my bank account one rainy evening, the screen casting a cold blue glow across my cluttered desk. The numbers stared back at me like an accusation. Almost nothing remained, barely enough to cover rent, let alone the debts I'd accrued covering Lily's wedding. Years of hard work, late nights, side gigs, and personal sacrifices, all gone, siphoned away by my own family. Meanwhile, my parents floated through life as if nothing had happened, praising Lily for the luxurious life I had unknowingly financed. Every congratulatory comment for her happiness felt like a dagger, silently reminding me how invisible I had become. I slumped into my chair, the weight of betrayal settling into my bones. I felt exploited, like I had been a stepping stone for everyone else's comfort and celebration. The trust one had built in my parents, the loyalty I had shown for decades, suddenly felt like a foolish, blind devotion. My mind raced with questions I didn't have answers for. Why didn't they ever invest in me? Why was Lily always the golden child? Why was I always expected to give without recognition? Debt, resentment, and emotional exhaustion collided into a crushing weight, and I realized just how alone I truly was. Even the walls of my childhood home seemed to mock me, echoing the laughter and clinking glasses from a celebration that had cost me everything. I could feel a spark deep inside, a flicker of something dangerous and empowering, the thought of walking away completely. The idea was terrifying, but strangely liberating. For the first time, I considered the possibility that leaving wasn't abandonment, it was survival. And yet, the question gnawed at me as I sat in the dim glow of my laptop: could I really sever ties with the people I'd always called family, and still feel whole? I woke up one morning and made a decision that felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I was done. Done with being the invisible fund, the responsible scapegoat, the one whose hard work was quietly stolen for everyone else's benefit. Without a word, I began cutting ties. I closed bank accounts, deleted contacts, and quietly removed myself from family group chats. It felt like erasing a part of my past, a digital severing of the umbilical ties that had kept me trapped for decades. Guilt hit me first. The thought of Lily, smiling in her wedding photos, never knowing the sacrifices I'd made, it made my chest ache. But underneath the guilt was something new, a strange, almost thrilling sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt control over my life, unmediated by parental expectations or familial manipulation. Each deleted email, each removed contact, felt like reclaiming a piece of my identity that had long been buried under other people's demands. I began to quietly plan my financial future, working late into the night on budgets, saving strategies, and investment options. My goal was clear: would buy a home, a tangible symbol of the life my parents had tried to deny me, a place where I would answer to no one. Every spreadsheet, every late-night calculation, strengthened my resolve. And I knew I had to keep this new life secret. No explanations, no announcements, no leaks, this was mine, and mine alone. The tension of what would happen if they discovered it lingered in the back of my mind, like the quiet hum of an impending storm. Deep down, I knew a confrontation, or some shocking revelation, was inevitable, but for now, I focused on the thrilling weight of autonomy and the quiet revenge that only time could deliver. Word spread quickly that I had vanished. At family gatherings and in hushed whispers over phone calls, relatives speculated about me: he's probably struggling, you know, after all that he spent on Lily's wedding. The word stung briefly, but then a strange satisfaction settled in. My parents, smug and self-assured, seemed convinced I had failed, that I had crumbled under the weight of financial strain, and that Lily's luxurious life remained untouchable. They believed they had won, that I was out of the picture, powerless and forgotten. I smiled quietly to myself because the reality was the opposite. This perception they had crafted for themselves, the image of me broken, defeated, was exactly what I wanted them to hold. While they gloated, I was quietly building the life they thought was impossible. Every paycheck I saved, every smart investment I researched in silence, became a brick in the foundation of something bigger. Property listings, market trends, mortgage calculations, they became my secret arsenal, my quiet rebellion. For the first time in years, I felt a shift in power. I was no longer a victim of their manipulation, I was a strategist, preparing a comeback they would never see coming. Each late night, each careful financial decision, strengthened a sense of satisfaction and quiet triumph, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. And yet, as I scrolled through listings for the perfect house, the one they had once told me I could never afford, a thrill of anticipation mingled with nervousness. Soon, very soon, I realized, the balance of power would tip in my favor. The stage was set, and I knew the eventual payoff would be shocking, satisfying, and unforgettable. For the first time in my life, I had no one dictating my decisions, no one monitoring my finances, no one measuring my worth against my sister's. I threw myself into the grind with a single-minded focus, renting a modest apartment, budgeting every dollar, and investing with meticulous care. Every transaction, every spreadsheet, every long night poring over market trends became a reaffirmation of my independence. Loneliness crept in during quiet nights, the absence of family both liberating and hollow, but it was the first time I truly felt ownership of my life. I replayed every slight, every dismissive comment, every gaslighting moment in my head, not to dwell, but to fuel a determination I hadn't realized I possessed. I knew exactly why I had to succeed, not just for survival, but for a vindication of all the years I had been overlooked. I researched property laws, investment strategies, and mortgage options with precision, leaving nothing to chance. Every small victory, paying off lingering debts, steadily increasing my savings, even finding tiny ways to enjoy life again, felt like reclaiming a piece of dignity that had been stolen from me. I visualized the house I wanted as a symbol, not just of financial security, but of justice. A place my parents had once mocked me for daring to dream of, a tangible representation of my independence and triumph over their manipulation. Each day, as I worked, saved, and planned, I felt closer to that dream, the excitement building like a quiet storm. And in the back of my mind, I could almost see the look on their faces when they realized it was no longer their world they controlled, but mine. After months of careful research, late nights reviewing listings, and crunching numbers until my eyes burned, I finally found it, the perfect house. The very one my parents had once scoffed at, claiming I couldn't afford, that it was beyond my means. My heart raced as I realized what this meant, not just a roof over my head, but freedom, security, and a tangible reversal of every controlling move my parents had ever made. Every late-night investment, every penny saved, every decision I'd made in secret had led me to this moment. I acted quickly, leveraging every financial tool I had at my disposal. Wire transfers, down payments, inspections, all executed with precision and determination. I could almost hear the irony laughing in the corners of the empty rooms. The house that had once symbolized impossibility now stood as my fortress, untouchable and mine alone. Walking through the halls for the first time, I could feel a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. And yet, the thrill of victory was quietly tempered by anticipation. My parents had no idea. Not yet. The thought of their inevitable shock when they learned what I had done lingered in the back of my mind, a delicious tension that made the air in my lungs feel electric. I could feel the story shifting, the scales were tipping, and soon, the power dynamic that had controlled me for decades would finally be challenged. Every careful step, every sleepless night, had built to this moment. And while I savored my unseen triumph, I knew the final act, the confrontation or revelation, was coming, inevitable and unavoidable, just over the horizon. It happened sooner than I anticipated. One afternoon, I received a call from my mom, hesitant, strained, her voice unusually tight. We heard about the house," she stammered, almost pleading. I could hear my dad in the background, his usual smugness replaced by panic. They demanded explanations, guilt dripping from every word. "How could you do this without telling us? Don't you care about family?" I stayed calm, listening to their flustered voices, letting them reveal their shock themselves. Gone was the arrogance, the condescending smiles. They sounded smaller, almost human, scrambling to reclaim a control they no longer had. When they paused, I spoke clearly, deliberately. No loans. No favors. No emotional manipulation. This is my life, built by me, and that's how it will stay. Every syllable felt like a brick in the wall I'd been constructing for years, finally solid, impenetrable. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was commanding the dynamic. I had shifted the balance of power that had been tilted against me for decades, and they were forced to reckon with it. I could almost hear the silence on their end, heavy and uncomfortable, as my words sank in. I hung up feeling a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. My independence was no longer theoretical, it was tangible, undeniable, and visible to them, even if only indirectly. Their shock, their panic, their inability to manipulate or intimidate me, set the stage for the final chapter. The payoff was coming. And I knew it would be as satisfying as it was inevitable. After the confrontation, I realized that I didn't need to shout, argue, or retaliate. My independence itself was the quietest, most devastating revenge I could deliver. Every time my parents tried to reach me, I responded with calm politeness, never raising my voice, never giving them the satisfaction of a fight. I could feel their confusion, their frustration bubbling through phone calls and mutual acquaintances' gossip, and it was delicious in a silent, understated way. Lily tried too, sending vague messages and subtle inquiries, as if checking to see if I had cracked under the pressure of years of financial and emotional strain. I ignored them all. I knew she had benefited from every scheme, every manipulation, every little advantage my parents had set up for her at my expense. My friends, however, could see me thriving, the new house, my stability, the confidence in my stride. Whispers of admiration started to circulate quietly among neighbors and colleagues, a stark contrast to the guilt and awkwardness my parents now carried. I began to understand that the quiet victory, my success, dignity, and reclaimed self-worth, was something they could never touch. No apology, no explanation, no confrontation could erase the fact that I had built a life entirely on my terms. I reveled in the freedom that came with it, the satisfaction of knowing my life was finally mine. And yet, even as I basked in this quiet triumph, there was a tension lingering in the air, a promise of the final moment to come. I could feel it, the story wasn't quite finished. The empowerment I had created, the independence I had carved out, was leading to a closure that would be undeniable and unforgettable. I finally moved fully into my new home, and the moment I turned the key in the lock, I felt a rush of pride and freedom I'd never experienced before. The walls around me seemed to breathe with possibility, a blank canvas I had earned entirely through my own effort, discipline, and determination. As I unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, I reflected on the years of being exploited, overlooked, and manipulated. It had been painful, humiliating, and exhausting, but it had also taught me resilience and strategic thinking. I knew now how to plan, how to protect myself, and how to reclaim control in situations where I was once powerless. Occasionally, my parents tried to reach out, their voices tight with awkwardness, laced with guilt and desperation. I respond politely but firmly, never letting them cross the boundaries I've set. Their attempts no longer intimidate or sway me. I have learned the limits of their influence, and I guard my autonomy jealously. For the first time in decades, I am financially stable, emotionally peaceful, and free to live a life built entirely on my own terms. I embrace this new life fully, savoring independence, healing, and a newfound appreciation for my own self-worth. I realize that walking away, rather than confronting them with anger or revenge, has been the most devastating and satisfying outcome of all. Their disappointment, frustration, and inability to manipulate me now are invisible victories that no one else needs to witness. The house stands as a symbol of all I've endured and all I've achieved, a quiet, undeniable monument to my strength.